Okay, Air Rocket Launcher. Obviously this is a bike pump, and I'm sure you already realise how it attaches. Sometimes if it's not attached properly to this, it will seem like it's pumping and it's not. So obviously that pushes on, the lever comes out, and you should have a sense that it's pumping. And if it is, you'll have a shot of air. So basically you pump this up to the pressure you want. There's a little button on the end of here which basically flips a valve in there and allows the air to come out. Now the pressure you take it to, when I say it's a little up to you, it does get a little hard to pump this up to really high pressures. Physics teachers often take it up to stupidly high pressures, about 120 to 150 psi. I'd kind of recommend only going the maximum 80, and if you only feel comfortable going 40 to 60, that's fine too, it'll still work fine. Okay, second, when you're pumping this, as you know, you just push down, but if you're pumping, when students are pumping, if they just kind of bounce it up and down, it won't do much. It's actually got to go all the way down. I notice sometimes students don't do that right, without necessarily banging it against the base here. Anyway, so making rockets. I've got a few of these tubes which are kind of similar size. The most important thing is these aren't finished, but that they're made from, this is just cardboard board, and really all I do initially with it, and this is a tricky bit in a way, I know it sounds ridiculous, is you can cut this down, you can make them smaller, you can just use the whole length, which is what I tend to do, and where you wrap it around. Now if you do it too loosely, which is what some students do like this, it won't work very well, because obviously once it goes on, the air will just go around the sides. So it has to be reasonably tight. So wrapping it around one of these to start with initially, and getting it reasonably close, and then having either another student who puts a little bit of tape here, a little bit of tape here, a little bit of tape here, is generally how I get students to do it. That will end up with something like this, where I've just got a bit of tape here, here and here, and they should test it on the actual launcher, because this might be a little bit different to these white tubes which I've got, which you can have students use in class. If that goes on fairly smoothly like that, that's fine. Sometimes if they do them too tight, if the circumference is a little bit too small, then if this doesn't go on very easily, it's not going to come off very easily. Again, if it's too wide, that's not going to work out well either. But that's all part of it. Now, obviously, this isn't a finished one either, but you do need to seal it. This is essentially going to send a shot of air up through here, and it'll fire it off. Okay? So the top bit needs to be sealed. So normally what I do once I've got something like that, where it's kind of okay, is I'll get a tape and put it down the seam to seal that as much as possible. So down the whole length, which is what I've done almost with this, but not quite. This isn't finished. And then I'd start, and in the top I just wouldn't leave it blank. I normally cut off a little bit of cardboard to kind of sit over the top to kind of reinforce it, and then have tape going over it. And the top is obviously the most important, that's where the most pressure goes. And sometimes if students pump this up too much, apart from the worry I have of them damaging the pump of the mechanism, and that's really high pressures, you know, I'm sure, you know, we've never broke one yet, is that it'll tend to just shoot the air through here. So, you know, this has got to be reasonably secure. So anyway, so you've got quite a lot of cardboard. It's usually only one. I'm sure you have some at school anyway, but this is some. And normally if I was finishing this off, I would carry on with it, trying to, and you couldn't put, I've got a few bits of tape in here. I'll try and get some black tape. This is good tape, but we've got other tape in here that you can use as well. And just like a dart, it's helpful. Just having a tube will work, but this kind of cardboard you can actually cut out and, you know, have small little, I'll just cut some from here and just show you what, yeah, I don't know if that's very good. So I'd say is having, and I usually on this kind of cardboard will spread it out a little bit. The reason I'm doing this is to create a lip on both sides. And you can then attach that putting a piece of tape. I haven't got one there, but obviously you'll just put a piece of tape on one side, a piece of tape on that side. And if you have them symmetrically, I tend to think 4 is best. It's easiest to get them symmetrical. If they're not symmetrical, it won't fly symmetrically. Equally around there. So just using like a template thing where they just cut off 4 things from a piece of cardboard. If it's a fairly thin piece of cardboard, I guess they could just stick them together and have a lip coming out. The lip is obviously, again, if you have 2 lips on either side, hold it down, a little bit of tape on either side, try and make them straight. Some students put them on an angle deliberately because they think it'll go better, and it will spin in flight, which I guess is kind of cool, but it won't go as high. Okay, so you then try and get 4 equally around each one of those. This, a bit like an arrow, it'll basically keep it going straight in flight better than if they weren't there. And what's the last thing? Sometimes some students will actually deliberately put a point on here. That can be kind of cool, but it does increase the danger a little bit. And having it go, the way I tend to have this in class, once students have made a set of rockets, so the whole class might be, a group might be launching theirs, is once you put them on there and you pump it up, I won't release it inside because it's really stupid. Obviously you never have a student anywhere near this once you start pumping it, because obviously if it accidentally goes off or something like that, I'm so tempted to push the button but I won't. Anyway, if they've got a little peak on the top there, which you can just do by making a little cone, sometimes what they'll do is they'll embed in the ground when they kind of do their flight, and that's kind of cool. Generally what I do as a competition is I'll set this to like that height, that's probably about 50 degrees, something like that, so it won't go as far. And therefore you're kind of getting them to all shoot at the same kind of conditions if they're pumping it to the same pressure, and see who goes furthest. They can go really far, and obviously if it's got a wet ground that you're going into, then they can embed. Even at high school, I really don't like kids running out to try and catch them, because I worry about them getting injured. And certainly with the water rockets we use, they're actually dangerous. So, if they can get hit by those. These obviously are fairly lightweight once they're in the air, and they're not that dangerous, and obviously you'd have students on one side and doing it like that if you're doing it. So just trying to be safe. Anyway, but they're pretty, we consider them very safe as long as you're not doing stupid things with them. So, and I'm sure you wouldn't be. But making them is a bit of a challenge. Students make a lot of mistakes with them. Now, it is important that you try and seal that reasonably well, and not masses of tape, but just putting some tape on there, obviously more at the top, and then having fins, and it's usually pretty good fun. Anyway, welcome to try it.